I've been using Android phones ever since the first one came out back in 2009, so I'm always curious to see what cool new stuff the other side, Apple is cooking up. And with iOS getting its biggest redesign yet with the new liquid glass look, plus the iPhone 17 Pro finally getting a fresh design, I figured why not give Apple another shot? So I went all in and picked up the most powerful phone they have, the iPhone 17 Pro Max, in that new iconic orange color. My plan was just to see how far I could push this thing. Now, whenever I get a new phone, usually an Android, the first thing I do is customize the living daylights out of it by just changing the widgets, icon packs, grid size, transitions, tweaking around a bunch of settings, the whole 9 yards. By the time I'm done, my home screen looks nothing like the default setup. And by the way, if you're wondering where I got these googly widgets from, our team actually created them. These on the home screen are just a few options, but there's plenty more where that came from. You can grab them all on our Patreon. Now, sometimes if the built-in stock launcher isn't customizable enough too, I'll even bite the bullet and install a third-party one. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. Now, on iOS, I quickly realized that you still can't swap out the default home app like you can on Android, so I had to work with what Apple gave me, which honestly wasn't much. Not to be a downer, but it's a pretty bare bones launcher, with the only real customization options being that you can change the colors of the widgets and the icons. That said, I do like a few things, like you're able to hide pages, which is great for switching between different setups that you created in the past. It's also got stackable widgets that are nice for saving space. And I love that you can have multiple home screen and lock screen presets and even link them to focus modes. That way you can have a different setup for work, for home, for bedtime. It just adapts to whatever time it is, where you are, or what apps you use. It's a super slick feature that I wish native Android had. Plus, even though Apple doesn't give you much to work with, that didn't really stop me from hunting for workarounds. I really refuse to have a boring vanilla looking home screen. After some digging, I found out that most of the iOS community uses this app called Widgy. It's a seriously powerful app that lets you create custom widgets from scratch. You can even import other people's creations. Widgets you wouldn't even think are possible on the iPhone. It's basically the iOS version of the KWGT app that we have on Android. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it did take me a while to find some widgets that I really loved. There are just so many amazing options to choose from, but the one that really caught my eye the most was this pack called Aqua's Legacy. And of course, my luck, it was the most expensive one I'd seen at 20 bucks. But I loved it so much because it really keeps that liquid glass look with transparent widgets and a glossy interface. It doesn't look cheap at all, and you can tell the developer put a ton of work into making it feel like a natural part of Apple's design. Plus the widgets are interactive too, with cool animations and useful information. Now for the icons, of course Apple doesn't support any icon packs, but I did find another loophole that basically uses their Shortcuts app to do so. All you do is create a shortcut with the Open App action, and then you can add that shortcut to your home screen. It'll let you choose whatever picture you want, and the name of it too. I just erased it because I just want the icon. And then on the home screen it looks great. The pack that I went with is this really clean one called The Icons. It's around $3, but if you get the $5 version, you get a lot more. And I'm a total sucker for minimal, flat, and colorful designs, so these were perfect. Then for my wallpaper, I ended up finding this iOS-only app called Vellum. It's been around for a while, and it has some of the most incredible backgrounds that I've ever seen. I even went into this section called Sandblasted and picked this one with an orange circle and a purple background. I think it was the perfect choice for my setup. But there are plenty of others that you can choose from as well. Plus for the home screen, I made sure to set the wallpaper to a blurry mode so that my icons and widgets could really pop. So even though it cost me a bit of cash and a lot of extra effort, I think it was totally worth it. In my opinion, it looks a million times better than the stock setup I had before. But man, if I had done this on an Android, it would have taken me a fraction of the time and effort. Apple just makes it so difficult to work with custom widgets and icons. Now, outside of customization, I found some iOS-only features that I genuinely loved. Some of them are so good that I wish that I could have them on Android. The first is how much more poppy and expressive the lock screen feels when compared to most Android phones. For instance, you can take most photos and have them be in this 3D effect look that follows your hand movements, with the clock magically behind the subject. It looks really futuristic. And sure, some Android phones like the Pixels have a similar depth of field effect, but you definitely can't get the clock to go behind the subject like you can on iPhone. And then there are other Android skins like Oxygen OS 16 that do finally let you hide the clock behind the subject, but it still doesn't follow your hand movements. So there's no combination of the two like on iOS. Plus, a cool trick on the iPhone, when music's playing and you tap on the album art, it takes over the whole screen. For some tracks, you even get these little animated video loops, kind of like Spotify's Canvas. I also love how iOS uses AI to handle your notifications. It actually reads the content of a notification and tries to figure out if it's important enough to prioritize, giving it its own separate section. It will even summarize a huge pile of messages from a group chat too, which can come in handy when your friends are spamming the thread. I will say though that sometimes the summarization isn't that helpful, but it's still better than what you get on Android with bundled group chats. And sure, on Android the notification management is a lot better, but it doesn't really do what I just described. It won't prioritize or summarize things based on the importance or contents of the messages. Then there's the control center, and I gotta hand it to Apple here. Their control center is just way more flexible than what you get on most Androids. You can resize controls more freely, tuck some away in a little folder, search for the ones you need when customizing the tiles, and there's even more slider tiles for quick adjustments. It's funny too because the latest Android 16 Canary build just copied the same flashlight tile design from iOS, and honestly, I still think Apple's looks a little better. I also really like the action button. It's just nice to have a physical remappable button that can do almost anything without even turning on the phone. I have mine set to toggle do not disturb mode so I can really lock in when I'm working. The one I don't get though is the separate camera control button, the one for launching the camera and using touch controls to zoom. I found it pretty useless. Then there's Apple's new liquid glass design language, which I'll admit, it really grew on me, at least for a few parts. At first, I wasn't really a fan because I figured that all that transparency would make things hard to read, and early on, it definitely did. When iOS 26 first dropped in a developer preview, the text in certain menus and notifications were pretty hard to read, especially with bright wallpapers. But since then, Apple has fixed a lot of it. And there's even an accessibility toggle now to help you reduce transparency if you want to tone it down. Plus, I love all the little visual touches. Like, I love how the light shifts across the glass on certain widgets when you tilt the phone, or how the glass effect adjusts between a light or dark mode, or when you switch between tabs, you get a nice glass capsule. It's got really nice effects. That said, I still prefer Google's material expressive design. It just feels more exciting, colorful, and more alive, but I don't mind liquid glass either. It's a lot more elegant. And of course, I can't ignore that a lot of apps just work better on iOS, especially the ones that use the camera. Apps like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, even Slack, they all tend to run smoother and produce better camera quality shots on iPhones. And that's mainly because it's just easier for developers to optimize their apps for Apple devices. I mean, they really only have to deal with a few models out there instead of the thousands of different Android phones out there with all different types of hardware. But with that said, there are also a good amount of stuff that I didn't like about iOS. First off, multitasking is terrible. You can't split screen two apps at once. Third-party apps can't overlay anything on the screen, like any floating elements or windows. And if you're downloading something, like offline maps for example, you have to stay inside the app. Otherwise, if you leave, the download speed can slow down to a crawl. Another thing that really annoyed me was the back gesture. It's all over the place and never consistent. Sometimes you swipe right, sometimes left, sometimes there's just a tiny back button in the corner. It's pretty frustrating. On Android, you don't really have that problem because it's got a universal back gesture. You can swipe from either edge of the screen to go back, no matter what app you're in. Then there's file management. Downloading stuff is still a mess on iOS. You'll need to hit the Save It button multiple times in different menus before it's finally saved on your phone. Plus, Apple's Files app is nowhere near as flexible or as powerful as Android's file system too. And don't even get me started on Apple Intelligence. It still feels really half-baked. Siri just struggles with basic questions, it can't handle multi-step requests, and doesn't integrate well with apps. It can only really take one question at a time too, and even then, it often fails with more complex commands. And it relies heavily on ChatGPT too, which sometimes the results aren't even accurate either. Even features like visual intelligence feel like an older version of Google Lens. They only work on photos you've already taken, not on live video. I actually did a deep dive comparing Siri to Google's Gemini on the Pixel, so if you want to see that, I'll link it in the cards so that way you can check it out after watching this video. So yeah, the iPhone 17 Pro Max definitely doesn't feel like the smartest phone that I've ever used. There's a ton of room for growth here. Now, outside of the software, when it comes to the phone's looks and the feel of it and how durable it is, I've got mixed feelings. Visually, I actually like how the phone looks. I know that bright orange color isn't for everyone, but honestly, it's kind of refreshing. Most high-end flagships these days stick to muted, safe colors, so this one definitely stands out. Love it or hate it, it's definitely not boring, and the two-tone finish gives it a really nice touch. It definitely speaks volumes. The phone was also surprisingly comfortable to hold, in my opinion. The smooth edges make it feel premium in the hand. The only thing that really threw me off at first was the button layout. On most Android phones, the power and volume key are on the same side, but on the iPhone, they're split across both sides. So it took a bit to get used to, but they're still easy to reach and easy to get the hang of. Now, the one thing that I really missed was having a fingerprint scanner. Don't get me wrong, Face ID works great for security, but it's not always convenient. Like if your phone's flat on a table, I can't just tap it to unlock. I have to pick it up and show it to my face, which gets annoying after a while. And honestly, it does feel a bit slower to get started up and used than a regular fingerprint scanner. Now, durability-wise, I'm a little skeptical about how this design will hold up in the long term. I've only been using mine for about a month and it's still in perfect shape, but that's mostly because I've switched between cases and I've come to use this tank case from Dbrand in the end. There have been a bunch of reports about people's phones getting scratched or chipped real easily, especially around the camera edges. And now some users are even noticing discoloration. The orange supposedly fades towards a rose gold or pink tone after having it sit in the sun for too long. I haven't had that happen because again, I've just been super careful and I've been using my phone with this tank case from Dbrand, the sponsor. It totally lives up to the name. This thing is ridiculously strong and grippy, so I actually feel safe taking this phone outside. And it still keeps a thin profile too, so it doesn't feel like you're carrying around a brick. It still works with MagSafe as well, so don't worry about that. And the buttons are even modular, so you can swap in different colors. Now, if the tank is a little bit too intense for you, check out their Ghost Case 2.0. It's completely clear, so you can actually show off the color of your iPhone. And get this, Dbrand even promises that it will never turn yellow, which is a huge problem with most clear cases out there, so that's great to hear. To top it all off, I threw on their Prism 2.0 screen protector. The installation kit is completely idiot-proof, so it was easy to install, and it even comes with an extra one just in case you mess up the first one. The glass is everything you'd want to, scratch-proof, a perfect edge-to-edge fit, and it doesn't pick up fingerprints either. If you're interested, head to dbrand.com/HowToMen. I'll leave a link in the description below. Plus, here's a sweet deal. If you bundle the Prism screen protector with any case, the tank, the Ghost, or even the grip, you get 42% off the whole thing. Not bad. Now, when it comes to the cameras, I've always heard and known that Apple has an incredible setup, so I wasn't surprised when I found out that this one's no different. You get a triple camera setup on the back with a main, an ultra wide, and a telephoto. All three are 48 megapixels, and the telephoto even gives you a really nice 4x optical zoom. So versatility isn't really a problem here, unlike the iPhone Air, which only comes with one lens. And yeah, the photos turned out phenomenal. The detail is fantastic, the shadowing is great, and the dynamic range is awesome. Colors look really natural and accurate too. The only little quirk that I noticed is that it has a habit of pushing the highlights to make images a bit brighter than real life, but overall I was still super satisfied with the results. My one real disappointment though was the zoom. It only goes up to 40x. And I know what you're thinking, who even takes a photo past 40x? But on phones that push to 100x or more, I just found it to be super useful for reading a sign that's really far away or grabbing details from an item that I'm trying to figure out what it is in the distance. So I kind of missed having that on the iPhone. Portrait mode was also incredible in good lighting. It does a great job of coloring and brightening the subjects so they really stand out. But in extreme low light, I did notice that it struggled a bit. It would mute all the colors and soften everything up, making the photo look almost blurry too. That said, nighttime photos outside of portrait mode were also really impressive. The iPhone handled them beautifully, sharp details, true to life colors, and the sky actually looks like a nighttime sky instead of that weird glowing blue tint that some phones give you. Plus, when recording on this phone, I also loved it. It's definitely one of the best phones that I've used for shooting content because the stabilization on this thing is another level. Most phones don't even come close. And I did appreciate that it came with like pro level tools like ProRes RAW, spatial audio, cinematic mode, action mode, and of course the new one called dual capture, where you can record with the front and the rear cameras at the same time. It's just perfect for vlogging. And yes, I know Apple's not the first to do this. Samsung and Oppo have had this for years, but it's still nice to have. The only thing that was missing was a full pro video mode to let me manually adjust things like the ISO and shutter speed. That would have been nice. Plus, it can't shoot up to 8K video like the Galaxy S25 Ultra can. But for everyday fun shooting, it's more than capable. Now for selfies, I really love the new center stage feature. It uses a square sensor to give you a wider field of view, so you don't have to rotate the phone to fit everyone in the group shot. It's honestly really useful. The only thing I wish though was a higher megapixel count. At 18 megapixels, I feel like the shots were pretty low quality, especially when you compare them to something like the Pixel 10 Pro XL. But overall, I was more than satisfied with all the cameras found on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. As for the performance, the 17 Pro Max was also incredible. Everything felt fast, smooth, and super responsive. The animations are super fluid, apps open instantly, and just moving around the OS feels seamless. Apple is just really good at optimizing their software to take full advantage of the A19 Pro chip that they have. It's something that I noticed that a lot of other manufacturers don't always get right. They might have the best chipset on the phone, but if the software isn't perfectly tuned for it, it never really feels that fluid. And of course, gaming too was incredible on this thing. It handled the most intense graphics like a champ, and surprisingly, it didn't get that hot either. It usually stayed cool to the touch, which I'm putting down to the new vapor chamber that Apple put into it. So yeah, performance was great. Battery life was also solid. Not the absolute best I've ever used, but definitely not the worst. I'd call it above average. It easily got me through a full day, and by the time I was heading to bed, I usually still had a little bit of juice left. I would consistently get about 6 to 7 hours of screen on time too. And by the way, this phone has some of the best standby times that I've ever seen. It barely drains overnight if I forget to charge it. But that's mainly because iOS is super strict with background app activity. It helps with battery life, but it also means some things like background syncing or downloading stuff can feel a bit delayed when compared to an Android. So it's a trade-off between efficiency and convenience. When it came to charging this thing, it was alright. I mean, it tops out at around 40 watts. That means I can fully charge it from 0 to 100 in around an hour and a half. So not bad, but as someone who's used Android phones like the OnePlus 13, which can charge up to 80 watts here in the States and 100 watts in other regions, I feel a bit spoiled now when I use other phones with lower charging speeds. Plus, another downside about the iPhone 17 is that it also doesn't support reverse wireless charging to let me charge up my wireless earbuds, which a lot of Android phones do. But here's something that most Androids don't have that the iPhone does. Qi 2 wireless charging at up to 25 watts with those built-in magnets. That means you can snap it onto any MagSafe accessory or have it charge or be docked in some of the wildest ways. Right now, only a few Android phones like the latest Pixels support it, which is a shame because honestly, it's pretty handy. I've got this MagSafe dock sitting underneath my monitor and it's perfect for keeping my phone propped up while I work. I actually even showed it off in my Top Tech series where I cover the coolest tech that you actually want to buy, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. So after spending some solid time with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, the big question is, will I be sticking with it? Honestly, I just can't do it. And it's not because I hate Apple or anything, I just genuinely felt really limited using iOS. First off, this phone costs a whopping $1,200. It's one of the most expensive phones you can buy. And yet, in a lot of ways, it still feels half-baked. Its AI features are pretty bad and feel outdated, the customization is minimal, and you have to jump through annoying loopholes just to get a unique home screen that doesn't match everyone else's. And the multitasking is also a real setback with those super strict app restrictions. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot that I did enjoy. I mean, the cameras are fantastic, performance is rock solid, battery life is great, and the displays look amazing. But at this point, you can get all that and sometimes more from plenty of Android phones for way less money. What really makes a phone stand out nowadays isn't just the hardware anymore, it's the software. Those unique quality of life features that make your daily workflow easier, smoother, and just way more fun to use. And that's where I think Apple still has a lot of catching up to do. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. If you want to keep it going, tap on this video to watch my review of the iPhone Air, or check out this one for my top tech series for some awesome gadgets that you probably never heard of. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed it, a quick thumbs up would mean the world to me. Either way, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Kapow!